All right, let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. It's been one heck of an offseason for the Raiders. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but now we're seeing some of the details leak out. Of course, as now there's been a really whirlwind a few months ago, and as we're getting ready for the draft, the really juicy tidbits are coming out in terms of the Raiders strategy. And it looks like the new leadership in Las Vegas has taken a really smart approach with probably their biggest move they made this entire offseason. We'll get into that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that's Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, obviously the biggest move the Raiders made, at least when it comes to player acquisition, was when they traded for quarterback Geno Smith from the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks then picked up Sam Darnold, of course, and now the Raiders. That was a big time move. And like I said, though, there's been recent reports coming out, the really smart approach. It seems kind of obvious now, but it was a great job by John Spytek and the Raiders leadership. Let's get into this report. Again, this is courtesy of The Athletic. The Seahawks decision, talking about trading Geno Smith and then signing Darnold, of course, naturally raises a follow-up question. Why didn't the Raiders just sign Darnold? After failing to trade for Los Angeles Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, the Raiders held meetings at the team's headquarters to discuss the path forward before the start of free agency. The participants in those meetings were minority owner Tom Brady, John Spytek, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, their offensive coordinator, and quarterbacks coach Greg Olson, according to team sources. The consensus coming out of those meetings was that Smith was easily the best remaining option for the Raiders, according to the team sources. There was some interest in Darnold, but the Raiders viewed Smith as clearly the better quarterback. Again, according to team sources, got to get that in there. So once the opportunity to land Smith emerged, the Raiders pounced. They believe that with a stronger coaching staff and supporting cast, he could return to the Pro Bowl caliber play he displayed from 2022 to 2023. All right, I think it's very interesting when you look at the verbiage there and what the Raiders' strategy was. There was no debate in terms of who is the better guy, who's the guy we want, and it was clearly from day one, Geno Smith. Now, let's keep that in mind for a second. Pete Carroll coached Geno Smith, so he, of course, is biased, right? So you know Pete Carroll loves Geno Smith. He's got a bias. You look at Chip Kelly and the quarterback's coach, they're working for Pete Carroll. They're going to follow their boss. So that means John Spytek had to go out of his way and really be enamored, really want Geno Smith. Because at this point, he could have sat there and said, listen, Pete, I've got my own guy. Maybe it's Darnold. Maybe I want to go some other different direction. But he listened to the experts here and he made the perfect move. And when you look at the data, it just makes sense. Let's go ahead and pull up this chart here to really kind of analyze the situation. We've got three other quarterbacks, on this chart we're comparing to Geno Smith. We've got their overall grade that's in the left. We've got their passing grade on the right. This is according to PFF, Pro Football Focus. Geno Smith is in blue. Matthew Stafford is in red. Sam Darnold is in yellow. And Russell Wilson is in green. We're talking about, of course, the biggest name veteran quarterbacks that were available in this past offseason. Obviously, we're discounting Aaron Rodgers because he hasn't signed anywhere yet. So we're talking about four guys that were literally moving and being shopped around at that moment in time. And you can see it is undeniable, clear. Geno Smith is head and shoulders above Stafford, Darnold, Wilson when it comes to their overall grade and when it comes to passing grade as well. So it wasn't just the fact that Pete Carroll worked with Geno Smith and the assistants really wanted to make their boss happy in terms of Pete Carroll. It's that the data supported going after Geno Smith. And this is where John Spytek made the right move here. Again, it's easy when you look at the data, but you're the first time big name GM. You got Tom Brady in one ear. You got Mark Davis, the ownership group. You've got a veteran head coach and veteran assistants. There's a lot of young GMs, a lot of guys that would have tried to, make their name and be aggressive, be different, be like, I'm not going to listen to these old guys. I'm going to make my message. I want to go after somebody else. I want to take a different approach. It sounds crazy, but it does happen. John Spytek, to his credit, you talk about the culture, the environment, the leadership group in Las Vegas. He bought in. I guarantee you looked at some data like this. He agreed with Carroll. He agreed with Brady. And as a unit, as a leadership team, they made the best move, the biggest move so far this entire offseason. Credit to the Raiders leadership for executing on this. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on everything Raiders. Obviously, we're getting closer to the draft, though. So, Raider Nation, got a question for you involving the draft. Of all the players that are available, who do you want the Raiders to select? Be realistic, of course, but it doesn't have to be a first-round guy. It could be a second-round pick, third-round pick, later round. Could be the seventh-round pick. Who cares, right? Give us the one player. Maybe it's a fan favorite of a guy you followed in college or a guy you just think would be a perfect fit for the Raiders. Give us your guy you think the Raiders want to pick or you think the Raiders should pick that you really want them to. Put them in the comment section below. But Miles, enough about that. Over to you. What are your thoughts involving the Raiders?
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting situation that the Raiders have dropped themselves into because Geno Smith He's a very interesting player when you look at what he's done. If you look at the numbers and you're being honest, he's been around for a very long time, coming into the New York Jets for 2013. But he's really only played about 5 seasons. If you want to count the snaps he played in between, let's say 6 seasons of football. So in years of a quarterback, as far as mileage on his arms and stuff like that, he's not that old. He doesn't have that much, wear and tear on him. So I think he still has a lot of good years left ahead of him. Because when you look at a guy 34 years old, you're like, well, he's getting up there. But this is a guy who hasn't played quite as much football as a lot of other quarterbacks who are 34 years old. So I think this is a really interesting aspect to throw in here. And the fact that the last 3 years, Geno Smith coming in 2022 and 2023, he won got nominated to the Pro Bowl both years. 2022, one comeback player of the year. This is a guy who's been just ramping up his play year after year, getting better and better. I think they got him right at the peak. I think they are about to see, Geno Smith explode. I think this is a, great environment for him to be in. I think Pete Carroll's a coach who really understands him, knows all about what he is and how to, enhance him, make him the best possible way. So it's like you said, the fact that the Raiders went in here, did all this, and made their decision, I think that's really good. And I think the fact they say this, Geno Smith is undoubtedly the best quarterback available. It's true because I think you look at all these guys, his play is head and shoulders over a guy like Matt Stafford. When you look at the grades, his grades are better than Stafford's from last year. And while Matt Stafford is also a guy that's getting up there, Geno Smith, in let's call it like dog years, football years, the amount of snaps he's played, he's way younger than Matt Stafford. There's a lot less tread on the tire. He just is he's a lot better. I think Matt Stafford is probably on a downtrend. I think Geno Smith is on an uptrend. I think he's got 2, 3 at least more solid years under his belt as far as what he can add to this team. So I think it's a really interesting, concept they have going on here. The fact they did all the research, they did everything, and that they think he was clear. I think when you look at the numbers and break it down, it makes a whole lot of sense. This was the right guy to bring in. All these other quarterbacks, Darnold, I think there's a lot of questions about him. I think he had one really good year. I think, maybe if you put him in the right system, he could be a good player. But Geno, he's the most proven guy. 3 years in a row, he showed, hey, I can play at a really high level. I know I've had a lot of football behind me, but I come in once as actually named a starter, given the weapons I need to succeed, do a really, really fantastic job. I think that's what they're going to do for him over in Las Vegas now. I think this team is on the upswing. Geno's on the upswing. I think it was a perfect match, and I really think they're going to complement each other very well going into the season.
Well, you're exactly right. And if you go back to those guys that we were comparing him in terms of those charts, these aren't quarterbacks that are on bad teams that are putting up halfway competent numbers and just had bad structures around them. Sam Darnold, of course, like you mentioned, career year, went really good Vikings team. They won a lot of games. The Rams with Matthew Stafford went to the playoffs, won a playoff game. Russell Wilson, Steelers, they went to the postseason. So these other quarterbacks that we're comparing Geno Smith here when it comes to that chart, they weren't bad quarterbacks on bad teams or good quarterbacks on bad teams. They were good quarterbacks on good teams, and Geno Smith outperformed them all. And I think that's an indication that the Raiders easily got the best of the bunch. And I'm going to go back to Spytek here and the entire Raidership leadership group here for really being so direct about this and not just waiting around. If you compare it to what's going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and honestly, at this point, I think the Steelers deciding to wait as long as they have may not work out in their favor the way some people have hoped. We'll have to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. But the Raiders were aggressive. They went out and got their quarterback early, and they got the right guy. The Seattle Seahawks kind of waited. They traded, then tried to wait. Then they got Sam Darnold. I mean, at this point, contractually, Seattle's okay, I guess, if you look at the numbers from a dollars and cents perspective, but it's not like they got better at quarterback. They got worse, clearly. If you look at the Russell Wilson to the New York Giants, the Giants feel great about Russell Wilson. Even the Rams with Matthew Stafford, they're already talking about, okay, how can we build for the future? How can we build long term? And Matthew Stafford, reportedly, if you kind of read between the lines, he isn't happy with the contract situation there, the way it's currently set up. So if you look at all these other teams and how they went about the quarterback position this offseason, The Raiders absolutely crushed it. Geno Smith, he's pumped to be there. The Raiders coaches pumped to be there. You look at Kelly, when he had his best years in the NFL as a head coach calling plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, he had a hyper accurate veteran quarterback, Sam Bradford, doing amazing things. Geno Smith is basically Sam Bradford times about 5 in terms of being better. So I'm expecting a lot from Kelly and Geno Smith this upcoming season based on that alone. But across the board, every single person in this Raidership leadership group in alignment. And that's what I like to see from an organization, right? Do you have your GM, new GM, right? He was a freshman when your minority owner, senior, greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, right? Is there going to be some weird dynamic there? Not at all. Perfect alignment. Head coach, new team after being with the Seahawks for so long. Is there going to be some issues there, butting heads? Perfect alignment. Obviously, new assistant coaches. Is there going to be some issues? Nope. Perfect alignment. This is great leadership from the Raiders and a great sign for the future. The Antonio Pierce experiment, even though it ended, in my opinion, a little prematurely, there was some issues about, at least rumblings behind the scenes, that Pierce, Telesco, and some of the leadership group, they weren't all on the same page with every single thing. I think going forward, for the first time in a long time, the Raiders very clearly have a leadership class, coaches, assistants, general manager, ownership group. They're all bought into the same direction, the same approach. And the best part is for you Raider Nation, when you look at the numbers, it's also the best approach. If everyone was bought into something stupid, that would be bad. But when you look at the data and you just look at the entire situation, this Raiders leadership group, they're all aligned and it's in the smart direction.